today we will follow up with our series, our mini-series, I would say, on Songs of Moses. And last time we had a song of crossing of the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds. And today we will be in the book of Numbers in chapter 21. Mainly in verses 17 and 18, but before we'll get there, I want to go into some kind of historical context, really short. So in the book of Numbers, what happened is, in the very beginning, we are in the wilderness, we are set up as a camp, and then we kind of go through the wilderness up to the borders of the land. Then 12 spies go there, come back, bring actually at first good news, but for some reason people decided to stay, to let's put it this way, not to stay, but to reject the entry to the land, and then they got stuck. So this is our preparation, and then because they rejected to be in the land, they got stuck for like 38 years. Okay, and then we have out of the wilderness. Okay, so in those last chapters, 20, 21, and so on and so forth, we are technically like over here in the very last years of this 38 useless years of travel. Okay, so we have about a couple of years normal travel through the wilderness, and then we have 38 useless years. By this time, what happened is, we have two people out of three main leadership characters, and the leadership characters are, of course, Moses, we have his brother, Aaron, and we actually have older sister, Miriam. Okay, by our moment in history, these two guys are dead. Okay, so we do not have Miriam. She died in chapter 20. Yes, in the very beginning of chapter 20. And actually it's very interesting. As soon as she dies, we immediately have an encounter of water. And then Aaron dies, and as soon as Aaron dies, we defeat the first enemy that we encounter. Okay, and now we have Moses, and in the block of verses 10 to 20, we have a very interesting setup. So in 21 verses 10 to 20, we have, as I very love it, kind of like a structural analysis of the passage would be like this. So we have four camps, okay, verses 10 to 13. This is A. Okay, and as a response to that, let's put them here, 10 to 13. And then A prime will have another four camps. So not the same one, it's a different geography, but we have four places mentioned here. So they were here, then they moved to this place, and to this place. And then we have another four camps in verses 18 to 20. Okay? And in the middle, we have this wonderful encounter of the well. So we'll call it Song of the Well. The well. Okay? So, this is where we are. And with this in mind, let us go into the text, and I will have, we'll go not only verse by verse, because we have only two verses basically. We'll go almost word by word. So, again, before we go into this place, let's go into verse 16. Let me read it. And from there they continued to bear that is the well of which the Lord said to Moses, gather the people together, and I will, that I may give them water. And we have word in English, we have word beer, and bunch of Israelites, men, start to sing. What I would say is, no wonder. Of course, if you have a place called beer, you would start to get singing. The thing is, we need to pronounce it in more, let's say, Jewish style. It's not beer, it's be'er, okay? So we should have something like this here. And this particular word means well, okay? I know in the middle of coronavirus pandemic, well means feeling good, but this well means something that you dig, in the ground and so on and so forth. So that's the well. Possibly, so this is verse 16. It's very possible that that's the same geographical place that we find in the book of Isaiah in chapter 15, verse 8. And if this is true, so it is not necessarily true, but it is possible that this is true. And in Isaiah 15:8, this place is called Be'er Elim, so the well of gods, or the well of mighty ones. Let's put it this way. But if this is true, this is very interesting. Because the last lesson we've talked about that the song by the sea is quoted and elaborated in Isaiah 12. Now, this song, not necessarily quoted, but the same places mentioned in Isaiah 15. So it looks like Isaiah, in different places of his prophecies, in different moments of his speeches or sermons, he kind of picks up on the Exodus and wilderness story. Just an interesting observation and parallel. Now, let us go into the text. Verse 17. So then Israel sang this song. Okay. It doesn't say here that Moses was the guy who started the song. But since the whole people of Israel sing the song, we decided to include it into the songs of Moses. Spring up, O well, and sing to it. So we have two things here. One of them is people of Israel address the well, and what they say is in ESV, English Standard Version, it is translated as spring up. But actually, this word that which is translated here as a spring up comes from the verb Allah, which is to ascend. Okay, to go up, to be lifted, elevated. Okay, like for example, if you go into Psalms. Starting with Psalm 122, if I believe correctly, to 134, we have Psalms of Ascension. Okay, that's the same root. Okay, there is another interesting parallel with this verb is Leviticus 1 tell us off the right that is usually described as a burnt offering or whole burnt offering. But in reality, what we have in Leviticus 1 is a rite of ascension. So that true chance for a believer, for a worshiper, to ascend to God, but he would not burn himself, but he would like identify himself with a sacrificial animal, and this animal would be in the fire, and then this smoke ascends to God. So what they asking here, Israelites, is for well to go up, to ascend, to deliver the water, or just be erected from the earth. And then the second part, kind of like a mirror, is sing to it, or sing to, okay? So, two things. On one hand, we see the well itself, and then the other hand, we see the reaction or invitation of the whole congregation to enjoy the singing. And it needs a couple words of explanation. One of them, if you go through commentary to commentary, most of them, when they explain this song, which is only like 1.5 verse in the Bible, so it's like 4 lines at best, what they usually say is, people of Israel worship God, or glorify God, or give thanks to God for this wonderful, miraculous well. And how miraculous is that? That's a different story. We can talk also about that. But the thing is, in reality, we do not have anything in the text where people address God by name. So there is no name of God. Either it is presupposed that whatever great things happened in their life, and we'll talk about this, what exactly happened, it presupposes that was under the guidance or influence of the Lord, or we need to be very careful and see this particular song as an example when people sing about things that happen in their casual life. Let's put it this way. As casual as finding the water. I understand, in the wilderness, finding the water is not as casual as we can think of, but this is not really some kind of mystical experience. It's one of their routine, basic part of life, getting a water. And they also dedicate a song to that. And we might draw a nice lesson from that. First of all, as we saw, the song by the sea in Exodus 15 is pretty lengthy one. And spoiler alert, next of our lessons will be dedicated to Deuteronomy 32. It's another song of Moses, pretty lengthy one. So we have a long songs of Moses, and yet here Israelites come up with this 4-line stanza that they probably sing one and the other and time after time and repeat it many times. It's very possible. So we have times and we have needs for the lengthy song and for short, I would say, choruses that we can repeat. Kind of like I would not be afraid of this comparison, kind of like a nursery rhymes. You know, the things that catchy and we just sing them over and over again. So, going back. So, the spring up the well, and let us sing to it. The well that princes made. Okay, so first of all, as we already talked, the word be'er means well. Okay, it is a possibility. So how this well look like? Could be two things. It was either, some kind of, let's say, ground, and they dug a hole and then put maybe some stones around it. But there is a long mystical tradition, a reflection of which we find in the letter to Hebrews, where it says that the traveling stone that they got the water from was Christ himself. So there is a tradition that this well was also the same rock that we find in the previous chapter. And now, nobody hit it, nobody addressed it cruelly, let's put it this way. But Moses and leaders of Israel gathered together and they stretched their staffs and their scepters and rods toward this rock, and the rock gave them water. So this well that the princes made. So word princess needs small comment. We talked about this word actually a few times in the previous lessons. It looks like Tsar, or and usually it is translated as princess. For example, one of the main usage that we can find, which is familiar to us, not the main usage in the Bible, but which is very familiar to us, is a Prince of Peace. Okay, the divine Son would be called the Prince of Peace. But the thing is, if you go to a dictionary, usually, or Hebrew English lexicon, it will give you also this kind of definition. It's a leader or commander, the army leader. So the people who lead forth the army, they have made, and there is a possibility that this verb made means dog, or if we compare it to Joshua chapter 2, the same verb is used to search out. And they went and came into a house of Rahab, and it was told to the king of Jericho, behold, the men of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land. So the same verb is that these commanders, okay, plural, so we have commanders searched out this wonderful well. So they finally, not necessarily found it, but in a sense they recognized that that's kind of rock they need to treat differently. Again, because before in chapter 20 we have this sad story starting with verse 2, from verse 2 to 13. So in 20, 2 to 13, we find the waters of Meribah story where Moses hit the rock instead of speaking to it. Okay, here they recognize that this well should be treated differently. On the other hand, along with commanders, there is also nobility guys. So the nobles of people dug. Yet this noble people, again, can be translated a little bit differently. It can be translated as volunteering people or generous people. For example, if we'll go to Proverbs verses, we have an idea that this is great to expect gifts from a generous man. And sorry, I didn't mark this verse for me for some silly reason. So that's the same word. That those noble people is not only necessarily the noble by their aristocratic status, but their nobility or nobleness is presented by the sense of their generosity. Okay, so these guys they volunteered themselves to dig this well, and there are two main tools that are used to make sure that this well will work. One of them is a scepter. And it's the same word that we find concerning Judah in Genesis 49:10. Or I should have probably moved it there so you can see. So Genesis 49:10. So that's the word, and it's singular. So we have one very prominent or dominant figure of ruling. Okay? And again, tradition puts it into the hands of Moses. So now, instead of hitting rock with his staff or rod, Moses stretched this scepter toward the well. And then there are other people who are using their, okay, in our Bible it says staffs, but it comes from the word to support. It's basically whatever support you have in your hand. Later on in the book of Isaiah, it's actually in some of the places it's kind of like a food supply, and that will be cut off. So that's the same word. So with this in mind, we celebrate the natural gift, not natural that it is done by itself, but there is a God creator who provides through natural elements, and either they are achieved by prayer and thanksgiving, or there is another tradition that says that what they celebrated is the place that they would not go, in the wilderness, in the dusty places where they could not get any water, but this was the place where they can basically hit it with the staff and in a very shallow, kind of like a surface area, they found well. So they enjoyed this wonderful moment where they were not only relying on God's provision, but God provided them in such a way that they can start to take care of themselves. So hopefully with decline of crazy pandemic influence, we can start to take care of ourselves and get prepared for the exit from pandemic situation. Maybe we can rethink and re-sing this wonderful song. Questions or comments, and stay blessed.